Sam Bruchhaus is here from Sumer Sports, first-time guest to the program. Sam, welcome, first and foremost. You do Sumer Daily, the podcast there, do a little bit of writing as well. And Matt, who's at Sumer and I've known for a while, said, hey, Sam is all over the NFC North this week. He thinks they're getting multiple playoff teams. The NFC representative is going to come out of that division. So you're the guy to break down this division with us today. How you doing?
Doing well. Moreover, I really think the Super Bowl winning team is going to come from this NFC North, kind of regardless of who it may be. So exciting games. I think we're really going to see if that take will end up true, particularly after this week.
So do you think, and I don't know that you can find an answer for this in data. I don't know if this is measurable by any stat or any analytic. Do you think a competitive division best sets up teams for long postseason runs? Like, do you think having to come out of a nasty division where you're fighting into the last week or two, like, do you think that's a benefit to a team going into the postseason if they want to make a big run?
Yeah. So from the data perspective, there's only been so many in history, just incredible divisions, as it kind of seems like the NFC North is right now. You think of those old NFC West days with the Legion of Boom, San Francisco and Jim Harbaugh, the Arizona Cardinals, just a lot of good stuff going over there. You'd have to look back on some old AFC North divisions as well. I don't know if the data can really play it out just because it's a small sample, but having been, a football player at the collegiate level, it really facing off against great competition leads to great results. And when you have 6 games or so playing each other, and that's not your entire schedule, and now the schedule is so long, it doesn't really have that big of an effect on your overall record. I think it's great to be tested, especially when you're playing in those cold climates up north.
So let's actually start with Detroit, Minnesota, because they play this weekend, and we can close with some Packers thoughts because this is a Wisconsin show. But Minnesota's 5-0. Is there any part of the Vikings where you look at and say, I expect that to maybe come back down to earth a little bit? Because there's a lot of factors with that team that I think are stable and they're going to hold on, even if they obviously, don't cruise to 15 or 16 or 17 wins. What is maybe a thing or two about the Vikings where you're kind of looking at it with a side eye, maybe waiting for that other shoe to drop?
I think the big target for regression has to be Sam Darnold. We've seen him be successful in these kind of advanced production analytics in the past in a short period of time. When he was with the Panthers, he was one of the better in terms of expected points added, one of, statisticians and data analysts' favorite metrics, which basically just puts yards in context. He was pretty good at that. And he's pretty good this year, but you look at why he's good at that, and it's really the coaching job that KOC has done. Almost all of the EPA that he's generating is coming from throwing it deep and trying to get penalties, or hoping that, Justin Jefferson is Superman, as he often is, in making big catches. You look at some of these other, statistics and advanced metrics, and he's not great. He's losing a lot of EPA due to sacks, not fantastic in completion percentage, interceptions, not fantastic. And then for the fantasy football players out there, he's not looking great in some of those WAR metrics that are great for that as well. And so I'm really looking for some of those efficiency metrics and some of those deep bombs to not go his way anymore, and him to kind of regress back to the median. And the Vikings will probably regress back to the median, but KOC is such a good coach. We've seen him do a lot of great things. Maybe he'll be able to game plan around that.
What about Flores? Right? Like, that defense has been unbelievable. And they acquired some really good talent. Like, we watched Van Ginkel at Wisconsin for years. I don't know how to describe that guy other than he just shows up when he's needed with plays that he has no business making, you would think, right? It's like, wait, Andrew Van Ginkel is catching a line drive from 3 feet away and taking it to the house. What have you seen from Flores? Because we always talk about the Vikings. O'Connell's great, and Flores is great. What specifically has he done a good job with so far this year?
Right. So the name of the game with Flores is blitzing and causing a lot of problems. He will put guys across the line, and especially once the Vikings offense gets up on teams, he'll put guys across the line, and it's a really muddy read for quarterbacks. In terms of regression, as we're speaking about, their DBs have played really well, but they signed Stephon Gilmore 3 weeks before the season started. Yeah. That's a guy who has a lot of miles on him. You got to expect some regression kind of there. So I'd hone in on the DBs, but again, you have a coach who is making the decisions to try to negate all those problems. This week is probably the week where they really, really get tested, because this is a Lions team that has stars across the board.
So Sam Bruchhaus is here from Sumer Sports. The thing that impresses me most about the Lions and the thing that terrifies me most if the Packers end up in a must-win game against that team or, a playoff game against that team, they can beat you basically every different way on offense. And they're not an offense that falls into a trap of trying to be too pretty. If they're mauling a team and running the ball, like Ben Johnson will just keep his foot on the gas. And we've seen other teams run the ball with great success and then go away from it. I just haven't seen the Lions do it. They're so complete. Their offensive line is so great. That's what terrifies me about the Lions. And also, from a non-Packers fan perspective, that's just what makes them so good.
Right. And taking off my analyst data scientist hat for a little while, like when you get hit by big dudes, it hurts. And I was looking at like Frank Ragnow and Glasgow and all these guys, and these dudes are massive, even for offensive linemen in the NFL. And it's tough to play against that, man. Like, and Dan Campbell, does what it takes. And that even on 4th and short, basically anywhere on the field, they're going for it. You got to defend 4 downs against a team with athletic freaks at every single position. And you never know what Ben Johnson's going to call. I think he's done a very good job. And Goff has had basically 2 in a row A1 games. It's going to be tough to beat them if he has another A1 game. Really look to Flores to test him, though.
So before the season, when we talked about the Bears, I thought they would come in last in the division, them or the Vikings. And looking back, I'm like, man, the Vikings they had too much talent. They're too well coached to be a bottom of the division team.
Right.
I thought the Bears would be kind of similar maybe to what the Packers were last year. They'd have great games. They'd have ugly games. It was going to be the games in the middle. Like, what's Caleb Williams' median level of performance as a rookie? Because if you take away the good and the bad, you're left with this middle sample, and that's probably going to decide where they end up. I still don't think they're a playoff team. They're growing. They're getting better. Caleb is improving against bad competition. But this Bears team could absolutely beat the Vikings or the Lions or the Packers in a game down the stretch that decides how the top of the division shakes out. Or maybe the Bears get hot and they get into the playoffs themselves. I don't know. What have you seen from the Bears, and in what ways maybe have they surprised you?
So early on, the offensive line play was really, really struggling. And Caleb, coming from college, I thought he had the highest ceiling. I also really love Jay Daniels, which has turned out to be great. But he struggled with pressure sack ratio, which is one of these really sticky stats that follows you from college to the pros. And it's one of the things that we can really bet on in a quarterback market, especially coming from the draft, that is really hard to predict. And so we saw him struggle. He had people in his lap. He was having to try to do his best to stop pressures from turning into sacks. And, it's pretty sticky. He wasn't really able to do it. We've seen the last 2 weeks, it kind of come together, 23 for 29 last week, 226 yards, 4 touchdowns, like fantastic game. He's starting to put it together. I think it's just the building blocks. Like, how can we add more control over this offense? How can we add the throws that he needs to be making? Again, the division's hard. I think they can probably pick up a game against anyone, particularly because their defense has been gnarly. Yeah. They're one of the top defenses in terms of EPA per play, top passing defense. They're really causing a lot of problems for teams right now.
Well, and those early season games where the offense just looked lost, those are great examples because they were in all of those games. Like, I've seen the Patriots stink on ice offensively, and their defense will just give way and the game will fall apart. That hasn't happened with the Bears. And that's a big credit to their talent and the players on the field, but also to Eberflus and the defense that he runs. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the Packers and then maybe a big picture question about who you like out of this division. The Packers.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the Malik Willis 2 week, that was really fun. I did not expect that at all. When he went down, and I was at a wedding when that Eagles game was going down, and I saw the news, and then we went back to the hotel afterwards. I'm like, okay, so now I got to wait till tomorrow afternoon to know. It sucked. And then for them to go win 2 games with Malik Willis and actually come out of that early season kind of catastrophe, they came out okay on the other side. I think the last 3 weeks, they've cut down on more penalties. They've cut down on more drops. They've just become cleaner more and more the last couple of weeks. And I think that's been the difference. Where do you stand on the Packers through 6 games, and where do you see them heading from here?
So the things I really like to see, particularly if Jordan Love goes down, when he went down, was week 1. And looking back to last year, I was huge on the point total over because I was like, this Packers defense really isn't that great. The Eagles defense last year wasn't really that great, but that's not really what we've seen this year. We've seen a much improved Packers defense. They're 8th in EPA per play, so a top 10 defense really in terms of the advanced metrics. The safeties are playing really well. Jai Alexander is having kind of a throwback year, and they're really being able to cause turnovers and cause ruckus for offenses. And I think the offense, especially once Jordan Love came back, it's always going to be kind of like building week over week, particularly because they have so many weapons that, aren't to that spot of being, a Justin Jefferson or a CeeDee Lamb, not particularly one of the best players, but certified players in this league. And it's just about creating that chemistry, particularly throughout the year. We see Romeo Doubs, have some problems within the week, but then he scores a touchdown this week. And so it's like everything comes along, and the way that Matt LaFleur likes to coach is he's stacking plays, he's learning plays. When Malik Willis was there, he was running all type of stuff, really emptying the clip in terms of the playbook. And now it's just a growth, particularly for Jordan Love, particularly for that defense, and especially for the weapons around Jordan Love in that offense.
Stacking plays seems to benefit Jordan Love and the type of player he is too, because it seems like, I don't want to be so rudimentary as to say he needs to warm up every week, but he is a rhythm player in that.
Precisely.
If he can get a drive going and then another drive, like you just see him and the players around him as receivers too, they get into this groove. So I think the way that Matt LaFleur maybe likes to dial up games, it's benefiting Jordan Love, and maybe we've seen that the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'm a huge basketball fan, and you see those kind of rhythm players. Like the most notable one was Steph Curry throughout his career. Steph Curry's a rhythm guy, just like Jordan Love loves deep shots and loves to get it down the field. Steph Curry's 3-point shooter. And then in the third quarter, you saw him kind of put it all together year over year for the Warriors. I think that's the key for Jordan Love and the Packers is like, how can we win early in that second quarter and put the pieces all together, make the adjustments that need to be made, particularly with that defense as well, and then really take over going into the second half. And I think as you're playing these really good NFC North opponents, that's going to be really key.
Who do you like to come out of this division?
I really like the Lions. I think the Lions.
I think you have to. I don't think you could say for fun, like I'll make the case for another team, but I don't know how you pick against the Lions right now.
Yeah, I think the top two clearly are the Lions and the Pack right now, the Packers. I just think the Lions remind me of the great teams of the past. I was talking to our president, Thomas Dimitroff, who was in that Patriots building back in the day where they were walloping teams, that 2007 year in particular. And he said, we really didn't like if we didn't beat a team by 21. Like we were disappointed if that was the case. And it's starting to feel like that's the case with the Lions. Like they want to get to the point where they're making handoffs to offensive linemen and throwing fade balls to left tackles and, hook and ladders to Penei Sewell. And when you start seeing that in a team and they're still bought in when they're beating the Cowboys by 30 points and still trying to get their guys touchdowns and their guys tackles and such, I think that's the sign early season of a really close winning team.
They're just so complete. And that's what scares me is I just can't envision a scenario where the Packers are getting pushed around by the Lions and then the Lions get a little pass happy and beat themselves that way. Like I just can't see that happening the way that Ben Johnson runs that team. So that's my concern, but we'll see how this weekend goes against the Vikings. Thank you for your time, Sam. I appreciate it. Sumer Daily, online on Twitter at Bruchhaus or Bruchhaus Sports. Excuse me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Fun to come on.